signing in. Today, we are covering recruitment automation as a business challenge, and we are looking at addressing that. In our previous webinar, we have addressed CapEx approval as one of the challenge, and in the next webinar, we have covered vendor onboarding as another challenge and how we can have a technology solution to address that. And now we are covering a HR domain where how the recruitment process can be streamlined. And there are many organizations who's facing challenges in terms of entire streamlining of this recruitment process. And today we have Shivam joining in. So Shivam basically going to represent as a VP of HR, and he has his own business challenges in terms of addressing the different aspects of the recruitment, and he's going to brief that. And we have Siddharth joining in. So Siddharth is coming up as a Zvolv expert who will be developing uh, the digital applications based on the business challenge, which is getting briefed by Shiva. So I'm sure that this is going to be another insightful session for all of you. So tune in and make sure if there are any questions from your side, please feel free to post those questions in the chat window, and we will have our team responding to all of your queries. Once again, welcome to this webinar and enjoy the session.
Hello, everyone. This is Shivam. I'm an HR VP of a large enterprise. And today I'll be talking about the problems faced from the business side for recruiting new employees. And I'll be requesting Siddharth to help me with a solution for the same.
Hi everyone, this is Siddharth. I configure and build apps on Zvolv platform. I'm passionate about addressing business challenges through mobile application and smart technology. So
Hey, nice
yeah,
to connect with you,
we'll
Siddharth.
try to address. Same here, Shivam. So let's try to address your challenges. Could you please help me understand your problem a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. So, well, it has multiple layers to it. Essentially, I'll give you a brief about what I do and my team does as a function and where we are getting stuck. Right. So
Sure.
I and my team are responsible for recruitment of new employees within the organization. And we have been doing it in the traditional sense, which includes communication over emails, using Excel spreadsheets, just the way things have always been, right? But of late, all of these methods are really causing a lot of issues in the organization. For instance, when we are communicating with prospective candidates who we are planning to onboard, many a times when there is not clarity from the internal side, there is a delay in which communication or offer letter is being rolled out to them. And we've actually missed out on a few good candidates because of the internal delay. So point one, which I want to highlight here, is lack of transparency. At any point, nobody has a complete visibility of what's going on as part of the process. Where is it getting delayed? Uh, we just don't have that. We rely on individuals, some of whom are excellent in their work, but since we're dependent on people, the entire process does get affected from time to time, right? Secondly, is when we work with for recruitment, we work with a lot of recruitment partners. So these partners are the ones who, when we let them know that hey, there's a new opening in our organization, they do the hunting part of it. They reach out to prospective candidates, they talk about the job description, they filter them initially, and then they share the resumes with us, which we then take it forward as part of our recruitment process. Now, the same challenge which we face internally is also faced in our interactions with the partners. Partners don't really understand what happens when they share the resume with us. They don't know whether we have selected somebody or not. All that communication, again, is reliant on traditional means. And that lack of transparency is also affecting our relations with them. Third, it's about introducing automations in the solution. So of late, I've come to understand that in many situations, we did have the right skilled employees sitting within the organization who had available bandwidth. But it's just because we were not even aware that those skill sets are within the organization, we went ahead and onboarded external employees, which just added to the bottom line cost, right? So one of my key agendas for this financial year is to reduce that cost. And for that, I would like to have an automation which can help me understand the skill sets presently within the organization and if I can fill my requirements using those skill sets directly. So these were the 3 points which I'm looking to address, and I'm really hopeful that you will be able to help me solve this problem.
Great. That's very well put, Shivam. Uh, so let me give you a little brief about Zvolv. Zvolv is a hyper automation platform accelerated by low code, no code. So this low code, no code engine allows users to build applications at a great speed and with uh, complex automation. Uh, so let's dive deep into it and let's start building your process together. So Shivam, can you please elaborate on your process?
So on a very broad level, what I can give you an idea is that we have 3 different teams who are part of these process, who are the stakeholders. One is the HR team, which is my team. One would be the
Okay.
recruiters, and the third would be the
Mm-hmm.
project team. So this is the team who's actually working on a project, interacting with the client day in and day out, and they're responsible for actually getting the work done, right? So let me start with giving you an overview of how the entire process is going to work. My team, the HR team, we initiate a recruitment request. And
Mm-hmm.
then ideally what we do is we try and check whether there's an availability of an internal resource within the organization. So like I mentioned, it's quite traditional in the sense right now, but if your solution can help us automate at this leg itself, it's absolutely great. Because if there's a resource available, that step is taken care of and we really don't have to do anything else. If not, then we seek approval for external hiring. We take it from the HOD and then we proceed further.
Mm-hmm.
Once our HOD gives their go ahead for external hiring, then we let our recruiting partners know that this is an opening and this is the job description. And these are the number of positions which we are looking to fill. Then our recruiting partners go out there in the market, look out for the right candidates, do the initial screening and all the processes at their end. And then they come back to us with the selected few profiles. Once we have those profiles ready, what we do is we pass them over to the project team for the interviews stage. Now, interviews are all conducted as 3 parts. So we have a technical interview.
Mm-hmm.
This is about the strong domain knowledge which a candidate must possess. Then there's going to be a project manager interview. So each project is led by the project manager. So the manager needs to have a direct interaction with the candidate to assess their skill sets, even outside the technical domain, right? So they may assess the communication ability or like ability to do due diligence, what the previous experience has been in similar projects, etc. All of that. And once it's done,
Okay.
sometimes clients also ask for an interview. So if it's a very critical project, then sometimes the client also asks to have have an interaction with the candidate themselves and provide their go ahead, because ultimately it's their project, so they wish to have a say in that. So we have this 3-step process of interviews:
Mm-hmm.
technical, PM, and the client interview. Let's say all 3 of these work out well for the candidate. They are selected as the right person for the job. Then we go ahead and we seek out internal HR approvals and organizational approvals
Mm-hmm.
for release of the job offer letter. So this is the phase where we do the negotiations. We create a pay band, we create a pay structure, and then we prepare an offer letter, take the requisite approvals, and then we release it to the candidate. And once it's released,
Okay.
once we get their acceptance and we get the joining dates and other formalities, then this part of the process is completely done. So I hope I was able to describe how the journey would look like.
Yeah, yeah. And while you were explaining things, I could relate, and we have a very similar starter zap, if you will, from where we can pick and build and start customizing your workflow. So let us start from there. Let me quickly share my screen. From what I understand from your process, this is the closest that we have. So this is a process builder in Zvolv. This simulates like a flow chart, and you can quickly drag and drop and add tasks and build things. This process currently is quite linear. So in this process, right from selecting a candidate, scheduling their interview, getting feedback, triggering approvals, various levels of approvals. As you said that internally you would run through few approvals. You would also want the client to weigh in when it comes to approving a certain client, a certain candidate. all of that are here. But as I understand, we might need to tweak it a bit based on your initial process, which is whether the resource is available internally or should we go for an external approval. Am I correct?
That is absolutely correct. So I think in our process, the first thing I would like to have is this check whether we have the skills or not, because saving the cost of acquisition is one of our key criterias. So let's start with that.
Okay. So let me quickly do one thing. Let me quickly drag in a task box and let me quickly add a task, which will be, let's say, resource availability. Okay. And let me quickly connect it to the start. So what we would want to do is when the task starts, I want resource availability to start, and I don't want this to happen. Yeah. So now, once you are done with resource availability, you would want to check whether you have an internal resource or not. Correct, Shiva?
Correct, correct. So yes.
Okay.
So I think at this point it's a junction. We can go both ways. If we do have the skill set, I think the process ends there. If the internal resource is available, otherwise then the second track would be executed.
Makes sense. Okay. So let us just quickly configure that. Let's say Shivam, now we've added another task for internal resource allocation. There was one more task, right, which is external hiring. If there is no internal resource available, you would want to go the external candidate route. Am I correct?
Correct, correct. That's absolutely right. So I think that decision on whether we should do an internal versus an external, that we come to know when we are checking for the availability itself. So perhaps from availability, if we can have another track being run, I think that will solve our problem.
Understood. Okay. And what would you like to call this? So if you said there is an approval, would you want me to call it an approval?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what we do. So the first stage for any external hiring, it's an approval. So let's just call it approval for external hiring.
Okay. Great. And you would want this to connect from here instead of there. So let me quickly do that. Let me quickly create another parallel hook and call it. All right. So Shivam, and then I believe you would want to connect this to my original process. Is that correct?
That is correct. I believe there's just one more. Actually, once the approval is done, the candidate selection. Well, that sounds good to me. Yeah. We'll start off
Yeah.
with the
So let
candidate
us just
selection process. Yes.
modify this. Now this is how your process looks like. All right. So Shivam, now since we've configured all the tasks in your process, let's now configure the form level details or the task level details that you would want to capture. So we are back in our builder view. Let's go to the data points that we would want to have. So now when it comes to resource availability, what sort of data would you be looking to have in that form?
Hey Sid, great question. So essentially here, as part when we talk about the different data elements in this particular form, I think what me and my team would require is if we can have, since we are so used to working in Excel, if we can have something like a sheet embedded in this form where we can see like the different name, contact number, email ID, these parameters, and then basically there'll be one flag to check whether it's an internal resource or not. So I think that's what we would begin with.
Okay. So we would want to show all the available internal resources, correct? In a sheet, in an Excel sheet, sort of a
Yes,
widget,
yes,
correct?
yes. That's right.
Great. All right, let's call it available. And let's make it table. So there are all these different form elements. This is what we are looking at, which is table. Let's put in the name of the candidate who is internally available. Let me put in their email address so it becomes easier for you to contact them. Email, let's put in an in-place validation of email and then put in their contact number. And again, we have an in-place validation for mobile number. That's it done. Let us do hide, upload, and download. So we have a lot of configuration options even at the table level. Let's not get into it at this stage. Let me quickly add these fields. Then do you want to know whether we would like to go the internal resource, internal hiring route or an external hiring route, correct?
Correct, correct.
Would you like to go select yeah, and then let's make it a drop down with options like yes or no. And I think this will be the point which will decide which task or stage gets activated, correct?
That is right. Yeah.
All right, so let's get into that as well. Anything else that you are looking here, Shivam? So we have a table which will have all the internal resource available for this particular request and whether you'd want to select an internal resource or an external resource.
Yeah, just one thing. So at this stage, we also put an accountability of who's going to take the process forward. So we usually have a list of TMGs. So if we can have just like somewhere where we can pull from that list and select the person in the team who would be responsible for taking this activity forward, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, so Shivam, we've added two form elements. One is your internal resource table, wherein you could see all the list of internal resources. And the other is a drop down, which decides whether you're going an internal resource route or an external resource route, basically a yes or no. Is there anything that else that you would want me to add here?
Sure, just one more thing, Sid. So what we do is we have a person identified at this stage who would be accountable to take the process forward, right? This person is responsible for the talent management part of the TMG. And so one field where we can select from a list of employees who would be accountable in taking the process forward, that would be helpful.
Sure. So let me just quickly go ahead and add a new field, which says select TMG, and then we can connect this later to a database once we have the database built in for all the TMGs. So let's have it as a TMG, and I think this is good enough, correct?
Yeah, that's it. I think that looks good.
All right. Let's now when we come here, as you initially said, right, the decision of which task next to be activated would be dependent on this particular drop down. Would you like to select internal resources or not? So we have conditional dependencies in Zvolv. So let me go ahead and quickly configure that. So now when I come here, when I go to my logic section in the next task, I see both internal resource allocation and approval for external hiring. In this, I would only want to activate internal resource allocation if the would you like to hire an internal resource is checked as yes, only then activate this stage, or else if my would you like to is set as no, then activate the stage. So you saw how easy it was to configure conditional dependencies. We can quickly go ahead and configure these conditional dependencies. So decision making could be easier. Anyways, going back to our data points or the details that you would want to capture in the form. What data are you looking at when it comes to internal resource allocation?
Sure. For internal resources, I think it's just pretty much straightforward. One of the key things, I would say the most critical thing is the skill set. So what is the primary skill set
Mm-hmm.
of the resource? And then
Okay.
all these resources, they're all part of different centers of excellences within the enterprise. And so there's a specialization practice within the enterprise for different technology stacks. So we would like to have a COE field as well, for which COE the resource
Okay.
would belong to. And then if we can, just like we did in the previous step, have some field where we can pull in and assign an internal resource. So I think these three things would suffice at this stage.
Okay. Assign. Okay. Let's quickly do that. We'll come back to making this little cleaned up. Okay. Then let's move on to doing the approval for external hiring. So what are the data points that you're looking at if need be, or if you decide to go to external hiring route?
Sure. So for this approval, I think when the decision maker, who's our head, I think they need
Mhm.
to be aware of who are the internal resources who are within the organization, right? So this is a bit layered. Uh, Although I believe your technology automation will show the available internal resources with the skill set, but there can be situations where we still want to go ahead with an external hiring. So within this page, we would like
Mhm.
a sheet or something to showcase who are the available internal candidates matching the requirement, if there are any. This is our first, I would say, data point that needs to be showcased. After that, if there
Okay.
is a after that, there needs to be a justification if we are proceeding further despite having an internal resource with the same skill set. So this is something which ideally would come from the project manager. And then the final
Okay.
field here would be an approval. So whether the head approves this request or not. So these three things would be what is required in this stage.
Understood. So basically, it should just show me all the details from the resource availability. So let me just quickly copy that. So available internet resources. And then you said you would want to have a drop down which says if internal resources are available, yet hiring is initiated, external hiring initiated, please provide a feedback. And let me
Justification.
quickly make a text field. Yeah. And then you said there has to be an approval status just so that we are all clear. And then you would want options as approve, reject. Okay, this looks good.
Looks good. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Also, one thing that we quickly forgot, and let's quickly do that, is the initiation. So whenever you initiate a request for hiring, what are the details that you would want to capture?
Sure, sure. So this is something which is filled in by my team. Every request has a unique number, so this is like you can think of it as a unique request number just so that we can track it later on as well. uh, what
Okay.
happened to this particular request. So there has to, so every request being made, there must have one unique identifier attached to it. I think that is the first parameter. After that, we need to have details about the region, which, so we have split east, west, north, and south of India as the four regions. We would like to have details captured for region, what project is the requirement for, what is the opportunity stage, basically like what is the seniority of the resource, uh, CRM ID. So we also have a CRM which we would like to integrate with a solution like this, and that it needs to
Mhm.
have a unique ID over here as well.
Okay.
Subsequent to that,
So
one of the
this
key
CRM
identifiers is whether
ID.
it's a
Sorry, Shivam. One quick question. The CRM ID is something that a user is going to input, right? This is not an auto generation.
Yes.
So like the request number
Yes.
that you would want it to be auto generated.
Yes, that is correct. I believe what
Okay.
would happen is if we are somehow able to sync both these systems together, then maybe this ID can be taken from a CRM solution as well. So
Sure. Let me get to it once we get to the integration stage. I
okay.
made a quick note of this. So let me just quickly make this. While we are at this stage, Shivam, one more quick thing. You said opportunity stages had a drop down, right? What were the options for that?
Correct, correct. This would be like an entry
I
level,
guess.
mid level, or a senior level.
Oh, okay. But let's quickly do that. Anything else that you would want me to add?
Just a couple more fields. One would be where we upload the JD.
Yeah. Job
Then
description.
capturing of the primary skill set.
Okay, let me just make it as a file upload. Primary skill set. Yeah.
Whether this is going to be a full-time position or a TNM basis, so like the project type, full-time position, FP or TNM. So these two options for project type.
Yeah, and again, I'll make it a drop down just so that it is easy. Full time and then TM. Yeah, Shivam.
Yeah, then we have the bill rate. So we'll be billing our clients for the resources deployed. So there needs to be a property which talks about what the bill rate per hour is going to be like.
Yeah.
Location.
And this will again be pulled in from the details based on the region, right?
Yeah, yeah. And then
Yeah,
the start and end dates.
And this is the project start, project end date, correct?
Yes. So we would have the project start and end, and as well as the candidate start and end. So the project may continue, but the candidate is only engaged for, let's say, a period of few months. So we would like to have both of those start and end dates.
Fair enough. We'll have a start date, we'll have an end date, and then we'll have a project start date and a project end date. Correct?
Yes. And I think with this, we have more or less covered all the required parameters which we enter when we start a new request. So looks good.
Save and deploy this and see this process work in action.
There are a couple more things that if we can make changes to this flow, it would be really helpful. One would be in addition to the 3 levels of approval, the first level is actually an EHC approval. Only then we proceed further to level 1, 2, and 3. So is it possible to add one more?
So there is one more task that you want me to add, correct?
That is correct. This would be the one which is before the first level of approval.
And this is EHC approval.
Yes.
Okay. Let me quickly go ahead and configure this as well. Let me quickly accrue a tag, which is flow. Let me move this to the correct position. Let me configure the logic. So this will come prior to the approvals, correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
And that will be based on after completion of select candidate, schedule candidate, approve, schedule interviews. Interview feedback and trigger approvals, correct? See.
So, yeah.
After interview feedback, trigger approvals, that's when this starts, correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Perfect. Let me just quickly go ahead and move the dependencies from the other task. Schedule interview. EHC approval. Perfect. This looks okay. And this also looks okay to me. All right. Now quickly, let's go ahead and configure the data points. Let me copy what we have in approval level 1. Just let me quickly refresh. So what we are doing is we are asking for what is the base salary range, what is the joining bonus, which team the candidate is joining, what is the approval status, and remarks, if any. Is there anything else that you would want me to add here?
Just the feedback which is received from the previous steps. So previously, when the interviews were conducted, there would be like a feedback given for each candidate. Uh, so I think just a sheet which talks about the feedback would be helpful.
Yeah, let me just say, let me quickly just add this, save this, refresh. Go here, add a field. Approvals feedback. Let me make it a quick table so that you have the details. So we want the name of the candidate. We want the email address. We want the contact number. And we would want the resume. So be a file upload. And we would also want the score. And then any remarks. Is that correct?
That's correct. Absolutely.
Perfect. Let's have that. Let's move it to the top so that you have the idea. These are the details. Perfect. And are these the same steps for level 1, level 2, level 3?
Exactly. Exactly. All the approvers will kind of have to put the same information in.
Okay. Cool. We just quickly change this. Okay, let me do one thing then. Let me quickly copy all of this to these steps. So let's go to data points. Let me go copy fields. Let me go to HC approval. Let me say replace. Done. I will say copy data points. Oh, sorry, override data points. Save, and I think they're done. Yep, there you go. All the details are added here. Is that it? Do you want me to add any other changes, Shiva?
Just one more thing. Since we are talking about the process in detail, I wanted to take a
Mhm.
minute and elaborate the candidate selection bit a little bit. So what
Okay.
happens is, said many a times, what happens is we meet interesting candidates, but we are unable to hire them. Maybe we just have one opening and we have 3 or 4 candidates who are qualified, but at this point we can't really onboard them. We don't have the requirement or we don't have the budget at this point in time. But we definitely keep a track of such candidates. So we kind of bucket them as a pre-approved candidate, somebody who has already qualified to meet the requirements, somebody who should be onboarded, but is not being for some reason, right? So that's one bucket, and the another bucket which we think of is a new candidate. So the entire journey is fresh with them. So while we're doing this candidate selection, these are the two things. So maybe if we can have a flag over there, which talks about like whether it's a pre-approved or whether it's a new candidate, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
So in that way, like the information can flow in. And in case of pre-approved ones, we already have like a score associated with them since they have been with the process, they have gone through the process already. So all those things kind of help in speeding up the decision making.
Yeah, that's absolutely a great point. So what you're saying is when you're trying to select a candidate, you would also want to pull the details from a list of all the pre-approved candidates who are not necessarily hired, but are shortlisted to be hired. Correct?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
All right, so let me just quickly add a table for that as well, because table gives you more flexibility in terms of adding as many details as you would want per for the different number of clients. So let us call this as pre-approved candidates. Yeah, and then let us just put in the name again, the standard fields. I think these keeps on being the same. Email ID, let me configure it. Email, then mobile, which is contact number. So Shivam, how does this detail come into the system? Is this how do I mean? Is this inserted by the user of this particular form, or it's fetched from some databases?
Great
Or
question.
let me
So right
reframe
now
it.
the way we are right now the way we do it is we just maintain an Excel sheet
Okay.
of all the pre-approved ones. So like I mentioned, it's all being done on emails. So we just refer that sheet, and if something clicks, then we forward it as an email attachment. So I know in the high tech world this is being too traditional, but I'm open to any suggestions from you which can help automate this entire leg.
Okay. So what I was suggesting is, since you might have this list of data stored somewhere in your HRMS system, we can actually integrate and pull these details coming in. So all of these details will be pre-populated.
Wow, that would really be helpful.
Okay. I think we can put in an automation together. So let me quickly add one more table for the new candidates as well. Just give me a second.
Sure.
Again, same fields, name. Configuration, email. And they're pretty much their resume. I think this should be fine. Shivam, are these field looking fine to you?
It looks great. Just a question. Is it
Yeah.
possible where we can limit the type of files candidates are uploading as a resume? I've come across some really ambitious candidates sharing me decks of their industry knowledge, but it's really not required at that stage, right? So maybe if I can just limit it to PDF or something like a document file type, yeah, I think that would be really helpful.
Perfect. And we can also have a number, maximum number of the file that they can upload, and also limit the size in KBs. But let's not do that. Let's limit it to number of file for now. So yeah, all of that is configurable, Shiva. Quickly go ahead into the integrations builder and start doing an integration. So Shivam, which HRMS system are you using currently?
We are using Bamboo HR.
Oh, that's actually great, because that's integration that is available out of the box. So let me quickly open up my integrations page. These are all sort of integrations that we have, and each integrations has certain actions that you can perform. So your bot can leverage those actions and quickly move data, massage the data, put in certain business logics. All of that can be done. So let's quickly look at all these sort of actions that we have. So in this particular details, we have get employee details, add employee, and list of all the employees filtered by files and categories. So these are the three actions that are available out of the box. You can also, of course, configure more options based on all the APIs that are available. Just let us go ahead and integrate this. So to integrate this, all you need to do is put in a title, put in a description, so that becomes easier for you to identify what it is, and put in the credentials, the API key and the company domain. Let me just quickly do this. So now once you have done that, you see that integration and you see all the details, actions that are available for that particular integration. You can go ahead and create your own application, own action, get the API parameters available, map key value pairs so that the data can be pulled and pushed into certain data sets. All of that is available out of the box. So it's really powerful. You can test the responses and all of that. Now, since we've configured your process, we've done integrations, we have configured automation bots, all of that. Let's now go ahead and configure the user screens and the kind of charts, reports that you would want to see. Okay, to do that, let's quickly navigate to dashboards. Yeah, we don't want this. Let us create a new page. I would want to call this dashboard for now. I can also say who is going to be able to view this particular dashboard and who's going to be able to edit it. So let me just keep it admin for now because I'm logged in as an admin. Okay, now we've added the dashboard. Now let us quickly go ahead and add a widget. So Shivam, what is the first kind of dashboard that you would want me to create? We have all these different kind of options that are available: a data table, a donut chart, bar chart, line chart, scattered plot, map, KPI, anything and everything that you can imagine.
Well, that's
How
awesome.
about
It's really a extensive library. So one of the things which we generally prepare, which we as a team work on is a hiring tracker. So what it is essentially um, we have resources with all the different skills, right? Someone's on working on Java, someone's working on HTML, and we wish to track how many positions are open versus how many positions have been filled. So the key element here is the skill set, and we wish to have a view which talks about open versus hired for that particular skill. So if you can visualize it, maybe like in a bar chart, I think that would be helpful.
Oh, okay, perfect. So let me quickly see if I can create one. So to do that, let's select a bar chart because that's what you wanted to see. Let me call it a hiring tracker. Okay, let us now go ahead and quickly add the data points. So now what I'm doing is I'm going to add details from the initiation form, which is our project initiation form. Let us quickly take skills because that's what we would want to do. Comparison again. So skills. This one we have taken, we can see a data preview. Right now we don't have any project created, so there is no entry, which is fine. Let's again go to the initiation form and then just take the status of the project. Now let me quickly configure a quick pivot. So we will pivot it based on the status. Let's pivot it based on the skills, add some value for, say, open count. We'll take status, we'll say count, and we'll add filter on status count where the value is in active, which is my open. Let's say hired count. Let me again take status count, status filter in completed, and hired, let's say hired, and then let's say open count. Let's say done. Now again, as we don't have any data, this won't come up, but I'll just quickly configure my series and then we can add data and see how this works. So we'll say the name of my series is skills. Let's say skills, and then we will say the argument field is hired. So this becomes hired. And then we'll say the other is the series. How many skills are open? Okay, and that's it. Now we have a bar chart. Again, we don't have any data here, so it won't show up. Now, let's configure the other widget. What's the other report or widget that you would want to see, Shivam? This will all make sense. The
Sure.
data will start flowing in once we have projects created.
Understood. So in this one, like we had the view which was specific to the skills. I think next one is something where we would want to have a view of each and every request which came in. So we call it as a requirement tracker. So each request, like I mentioned, needs to have like a unique ID. So for each one of them, each unique ID, if we can come to know who requested it, which region it pertains to, and whether it's still in process or whether it has been fulfilled, I think that would be a helpful one.
Okay. So is it kind of a table that you're looking at so that it has
Yes,
some
exactly,
hyperlinks so you can click on it
exactly.
and get to the things? Yeah. All right.
Correct.
So let me just quickly go ahead and configure a data table. Let me call it as a request tracker. Okay, now we're here. Now let me quickly configure the data points. Again, going from the initiation form. Let us see all the request IDs. So request number, we'll say request ID. Then we want to know which region it originated from. So let's say initiation, let's say region. The other thing that you would want to know, what is the status, whether it is active or it is completed. Correct, Shivam?
Yes, yes. Whether this request has been fulfilled or is it still in process?
Yep, makes sense. And then I think who it was requested by.
Yeah.
Okay, now since we have all the data points, now let's just configure the columns. My first column that I would want to be is the request ID. And I want this to link to the underlying project or the ticket. So let me create it as a hyperlink, which is the project link. The second column that I would want to have is who it has been requested by. And this is like a user field. So I'll quickly configure it as a user search. So now these are all the styling options, if you will, that are available to configure your column so that your table looks more clean. Let me go ahead and configure region. We can configure region as tags, and this will give color codings to all the different region. So if I say my region is East, I want it to show up as orange. If my region equals to West, I want to show up as green. If my region equals to South, I want to show it up as pink. Again, these are random colors that I'm choosing. Let's say blue. Okay, and then so
Now with a little bit more refinement and adding some default data, cleaning up things a bit. This is the final version of the app. Let me quickly walk you through it. What we've done is we've created two user screens. So there is a HR dashboard and then there is a recruiter's dashboard. On the HR's dashboard, you get your hiring tracker that we spoke about, the milestone tracker, the task tracker where we spoke about, wherein you can click on the name of the task and it can take you to the task, where you can click on the name of the project, it will take you to the name of the project. I'll run you through the entire list again. The requirements tracker, so you can at a glance see how many requirements are open, what is the status of your current requirement, the skill-wise status summary, the projected start, so your demand versus your fulfillment, so status of that will be available on your HR dashboard. And similarly on the recruiter's dashboard, how many applicants have applied, how many interviews have been scheduled. So basic KPIs of all the key level details that they would want to see, and a tracker for all the open requests so that they can quickly click on it and get to that request and see where the things are pending and move it forward. Okay, so now let's quickly jump to the dashboard and run you through a quick demo of this particular process. So now when you click on initiate recruitment, this is the form that is presented. A unique ID is not editable because it will be automatically generated. Let us select region from the drop down. Let us give this project a name. We'll say coast hiring. We'll say what is the opportunity level. We'll say mid-level. What is the CRM ID? I will say APC CRM 001. What is the time of position project type? We'll say full position. This is requested by the admin. If I had a GD, I can upload a GD. Who is the COE? I can put in that. Let's say primary skill is Java. Any additional skill, we don't need that. Billing per hour, let's say 500. Location, we'll say Pune. Start date is say.
In our organization, Java is mapped to the developer COE. So do you want to just fill that in maybe? I think it's very similar to our use case, so would be happy to see that.
Sure. So what you want me to fill in COE, developer?
Developer. Yeah.
Sure. Let's now put in the project details. The project starts from the first and it goes on, say, for another year and a half. Let's put that and then just say submit. So now what happens in the background is the request is getting created. Once the request is getting created, a unique ID is assigned to it, and now I can start seeing it on my dashboard. Okay. Now this is the ghost hiring that we quickly did. We can see all the details of that particular new request that has come in. This is the ghost ID. This is the request ID that was created for it. I can click on it. I can see all the details. Resource availability is the first task that is available. I can click on here. I can get to this. Now it showed me, since we picked the skill as Java, it showed me all the internal resources that were available for that particular selected skill. Would you like to select an internal resource? So Shivam, what you would want me to do? Yes or no?
I'd like to see an external hiring. So let's mark it as no.
Okay. All right, let's do that as no. Want to see external. I'm just making comment. Sorry about that. As soon as I submit this, the next task in the line got activated. Let us just now quickly go back to that flow, close this out. Now, based on, as we said, we just need external hiring. It skipped the internal hiring resource task, and it made external hiring approval active. And now we can say whether we are approving this. Let's say we approve. So we've received an approval for external hiring. Now let's see what the next activity is in line. Initiate external hiring. Now, when we go to initiate external hiring, we can tag it to we can tag it to RMG Spock, and we can say which vendor is going to take this forward. Let's say Swasni is the vendor. Let me quickly submit this. Now it moves to select candidate. Now, when it comes to select candidate, I can select candidates from a pre-approved candidate list, or we can say new candidates. Let's just say new candidates in this particular case. And we can enter the details of all the candidates that had applied for this particular position. And you could also put in the number of resumes received and the total resumes applied for that particular job. You can also do an upload file. So this is a basic Excel. Let me just quickly put this details. Sample. Okay, let me add one more. Two. Okay, and let me quickly submit this. Once I have done this, all this information is getting captured and it moves to the next process, next step in line, which is schedule interviews with the clients, with the candidates.
Okay.
Sorry, Shivam, you had a question?
No, I'm just saying I'm following you. You can go ahead.
Okay. So now the employee at your end can now call these guys up and schedule their interview, put in the dates for when the technical interview will happen, and who will conduct that particular technical interview, when will the PM interview happen, and who will conduct the PM interview. So all of those details can be entered in. Let me just
So all
quickly
these
get all
names
of these
of
details.
people undertaking interviews, can this all flow in from my CRM to this application?
Yes, that's pretty much the idea. Right now, we've created databases internally, and the data is coming in from there. But yes, we can connect it with your CRM and get all the info flowing in, same as what we did for the HRMS tool.
Okay.
Now let me put this.
Also,
And what
I
will
think
happen is,
one more requirement which may come up in the future is
Mhm.
that, you know, like if I'm assigning an individual to take an interview, but they move out of the organization, so in that case there's a gap. So is it possible for me to assign maybe a group, and like whoever is available in the group, they can probably take the interview? Is that a solution which we can think of?
Sure. So right now, what we have here is we have configured users as a representative to take an interview. Rather than users, we can assign it to a role. So whosoever joins into that particular role will now be assigned to this particular activity. Does that make sense?
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, that solves
Yeah.
a lot of the problems.
Great. Uh, Now the other task is interview feedback and trigger approvals. So we'll go here. We'll say whether we want to select this person, we want to archive this person or reject this. We'll say select this. We'll say archive this. We'll put in whatever the salary range is. Let's
So
say
the scoring part,
80,000.
the scoring part, is
Yeah,
that for like the pre-approved ones where you already have that data with you? Is that where that information comes in?
that's that's correct. That's where if we have the details of these candidates in our HRMS system, that's the detail that will flow in from you. So that's correct. If the candidate was pre-validated, their scoring details would directly populate here.
Okay, that's helpful.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when I submit this, it will trigger the approvals based on what we just decided. So now the first approval is EHC approval. This is the approval that we just added. Again, if there were score, the score would come in. If there were any approval feedback remarks that would come in here, we can say whether it is accepted or rejected. I will say accept. I will say looks good, and I'll submit. Again, the next level of approval gets triggered, which is the level 1 approval. Now, this levels can be assigned to whosoever you want to. Again, we can capture in their approval status. We can run through them. We can go to the next level of approval, which is the level 2 approval. Again, the same thing. We can put in our details. We can verify the details that were entered before. We can put in our remarks, say submit, and then it moves to the next level, which is your level 3. Again, the same thing. Let's say, okay, submit this. Now it triggers approval status and release offer letters. So now we say, or we can see all the levels of approval and their statuses, what were the statuses for each of these. And then we can say, okay, now since everyone has approved this, now let's go ahead and release the approval, release the offer letter. Once the offer letter is released, then the candidate will accept the offer. We can put in a status when the offer was accepted, any date on which the offer was accepted. A signed offer letter can be uploaded here. Right now, we've only given an option, a drop-down option, whether yes or no. And then once that is done, you put in the joining details. You say when the client, whether the candidate joined, which date he joined, what was the anticipated joining date, and what was the actual joining date. So you can also track that. And then that's it. Like your hiring process is completed. And then when you go to your dashboard, now you can see things. Your new request that we just created is now completed.
So overall, I think all the three problem statements which I had mentioned to you at the beginning of our interaction today, I think they are very well addressed with this application. So thank you so much, Sid. Thanks so much for your time and building this app for me.
Thank you, Siddharth and Shivam, for a wonderful session. I hope you all enjoyed the session. This given an insight for you in terms of how rapidly you will be able to develop applications on Zvolv platform. And it was very interesting to listen how complex business problems can be easily automated and digitized using the power of low code, no code platform. Once again, thank you everyone for joining the session. We will come back with very insightful sessions. In case if you have any questions, feel free